Our next speaker, and I guess I should say before she gets up to speak, both of these speakers will be at the session after lunch, the material sustainability looking forward session in the room right next door, usually one of the more ripping sessions of our conference every year, so I encourage you to stick around and go see what's coming next. Okay, Melissa Walsh-Innes is the Deputy Director for Recycling Reinvented, a national nonprofit working to promote extended producer responsibility for packaging and printed paper through effective and stakeholder-coordinated legislation. Their goal is to assist states in dramatically increasing their packaging recycling rates. Recycling Reinvented recently completed a cost-benefit analysis on a model EPR for packaging program in Minnesota with projected significant increases in recycling. Melissa is a former Maine state representative, having worked on product stewardship legislation, including paint, medical sharps, pharmaceuticals, CFLs, e-waste, and beverage containers. Melissa was the sponsor of Maine's first in the nation product stewardship framework law of 2010, as well as the sponsor of a successful e-waste program expansion in 2011, both done with unanimous bipartisan support. Wow, that's impressive. She enjoys working with industry, legislators, NGOs, and consultants around the world to help advance this policy area, and has spoken to audiences across the country, as well as Australia, Brazil, and Canada. Melissa lives with her husband and 3 teenage daughters in Yarmouth, and drives her voluminous packaging recycling each week to the Yarmouth Transfer and Recycling Station. Wow, that's exciting. Big old truckload of stuff. Come on.
Thank you, Lee. I just want to put a local slant in there. I know Eric Street, if he's still here, he is the person that runs all that in Yarmouth. So thank you so much for having me here today. As Matt had mentioned, I was also here at the 2011 or in Northport when Brian Flaherty was talking about EPR for packaging, and I remember sitting in the audience being a skeptic, saying, there's an industry and a brand out there that is willing to support this publicly. What's wrong? What's behind this? So, ironically, the organization I now work for, Recycling Reinvented, actually gets funding from Nestle Waters North America, and I'm really pleased with the work that they do to try to, bring other brands into the conversation. So, thank you for having me here. So, as I said, Recycling Reinvented is an organization I work for, and it's a 2-person organization. It's myself and Paul Gardner. And Paul Gardner is also a former representative in Minnesota. And it turns out that when I was working on different pieces of legislation here in Maine, we had coordination calls with other people across the nation who were also trying to get this done in their states, specifically paints and pharmaceuticals, and he was on those same calls with me. So that's always fun to find when you talk with other people that you now work with full-time. So we are a 501c3 organization created 2 years ago. It actually started with Nestle Waters hiring Paul when he came out of his legislature to do a report to see what states in the nation would potentially be good models to have an EPR for packaging legislation go forward. And then once he got involved in that process, it was determined that it would be helpful to have an organization to advocate specifically for EPR for packaging and printed paper. And then I came on about 5 months later. So, and the organization was actually started by an unusual duo. Our board chair is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and our vice chair is Kim Jeffrey, the retired CEO of Nestle Waters. 2 very different ideological people, but they found a common ground in recycling and wanting to help advance recycling of packaging. Bobby Kennedy Jr. works for the Waterkeeper Alliance. He's a noted environmentalist. And Kim Jeffrey was interested, in getting more PET back and how to find a way to bring that supply cost down so that we can get more supply, but also just lower the cost, especially in the future. And what we decided to do as an organization, I know it was noted in my introduction, is to do a study. And we did a cost-benefit analysis, and all of the discussions that we've had with brands over the last 2 years, people want to know how much would this cost? What would it look like? We know what these programs look like for e-waste and paint, but packaging is a different animal. It's not a hazardous material. It's a material that has value, and product stewardship programs, it's a little bit of a different animal. So we decided to use Minnesota as a test state, and we want to see what results would be possible. What would it cost, and how would that work? So those were the questions that we went into, and we chose Minnesota because they have a great amount of data available. They're a mature recycling state. And I made live links on here so that when the slides are shared with you all, you can get more information. That brings you all to information from our study. And these are the bills that Minnesota has already passed in the product stewardship EPR area. So the approach that we took is that we hired Reclaim Steward Edge. They're out of Toronto, but they also have U.S. offices, and they've done many, many years' work in product stewardship studies. So we felt like they would be great for the project. And we also created an expert reviewer process. We wanted this to be transparent, so we used reviewers, about 24, and they went from industry to trade associations, all the way to USM Professor Travis Wagner. So we felt like we had a lot of great buy-in during the whole process. And we have 3 working papers, and they can be found on our website as well as at marketbasedrecycling.com. And we released those as the study went forward. And the basic assumptions that we put into the study was that there would be 100% industry funding, and they would scale up the best practices. We all know what the best practices are. It's if every municipality is using them, or are they able to. And all the producers would pay in. And I've got the link there to the first working paper with those study assumptions. And these are some of the key figures on costs in Minnesota. I won't go into detail on these, but it just gives you an idea about what the costs were for recycling, for the paper and packaging, household paper and packaging for the state, and how much direct collection there is. And this is some other baseline information. We did find that they were only running at 50% capacity in their MRFs, so that was really good information to find out. Some of the MRFs were running at really good capacity, and then they have a lot of rural, tiny MRFs that only ran one shift and just didn't have a lot of capacity and a lot of transport costs. We heard someone say this morning, weight and freight. It's a really important part of the cost to consumers in the long run. So what would the change be if an EPR model was put in place in Minnesota? This would be one of the big changes. There would be a vast increase in the amount of money spent on education and promotion. We all know that that's a huge component of getting the recyclables into the carts and into the bins. It would be $1 at the local level and $1 per household for statewide education. Single stream, statewide, 87% of households would have the direct collection. Same materials collected everywhere, harmonization. We all know that this is a best practice. It's just a question of getting it done. It is our belief that with industry financing that we can get that done. And another component that is very necessary, comprehensive away from home for parks, public spaces, events. The way that the study envisioned this happening is that if there's already a refuse container, that the industry would purchase a recycling container, and it would be in the exact same place, and that the municipality would take them at the same time. So it wouldn't be just having them all over the place and people would have to pick them up in random spots. It would be where people are used to bringing their non-recyclables. So what we did find is that the main conclusion of the study was that we can increase substantially the recycling of the household packaging and paper at about the same cost that consumers are paying now. And we know that every state is different. That's why we offer to other states to recreate the model or to use the model and the numbers to feed in the numbers from some of the other states we're working in is North Carolina, Rhode Island, Minnesota, The map that Matt put up showed California is interested. There's a lot of states that are interested in how EPR for packaging legislation could work for them. So we're really pleased to be able to share the study information. These are just some of the best practices, what would be increased. And you can see it would be a 32% increase in consumer household paper and packaging collection. So it's the numbers that we had hoped to see when we started the study, but like everyone knows, if you start a study, it could give you the opposite information you're looking for. So we were really pleased to see that that increase would be so high. And the study findings do account for residue loss and the costs of that program, which would be borne by the industry. And as we all know, it eventually goes down to the consumer, but it would be at the same range that it is right now. So these are some of the savings that we found. Shifting to higher volume, lower cost MRFs was a big one, keeping the competitive market, and the brands being able to negotiate better prices with the waste haulers. And these are just a little bit wonky, just getting into some of the variables we use for setting the fees for the industry. We have a lot more information on this, so if there's anyone that would like that, just come see me afterward, and I can share that with you. And I'm also doing a SWANA webinar tomorrow. I don't know if anyone's signed up for that, but we'll be giving a lot more information on the actual fees as well. I'm just going to go through this one quickly. This is how the fees would shake out. If you see like a cereal box, it would be 0.0087 of a dollar for industry for the recycling of that box. So it's much less than I think some folks would have thought before we went through the cost analysis. So that's great information. We can actually now take this and share it directly with the brands so that they can get an indication about what the impact would be to them or to their pocketbook. And these are a couple of the new questions that have come up since we've done the study, and we're working with people in the glass industry. We're talking to them about doing an additional study on bringing in cleaner glass. Is there another way to do that? Changing some of the streams, adapting the model to local market needs. I know Matt talked about that as well. And what are the quality drivers? So we're considering doing some additional study work as well as we still continue to advocate at the state level for EPR for paper and packaging. And this is something I hope to talk more about with local government. We know that you folks are the people that run these programs and know the best practices, and these are some of the components that we know that we need to have a lot more discussion with at the state level and at the local level as well. So I won't go through each one of those, and I'll keep it because I know we're about to eat lunch. And that's my contact information, and if anyone, as I said, if anyone has any additional questions about what can be done with EPR for paper and packaging, be happy to talk with you about that. So thank you, and I won't hold you from lunch any longer.